Hello and welcome to Book of the Mouse Club, episode 57, Monday, April 12th, 2021.
Morning, monsieur.
Where are you off to?
The bookshop. I just finished the most wonderful story about a beanstalk and an ogre and...
That's nice. Marie! The baguettes! Hurry up!
I'm sorry, but how can one possibly pay attention to a book with no pictures in it?
My dear child, there are a great many good books in this world without pictures.
I almost bounced clear out of the book. Some bouncing, huh?
Come home or make myself known.
J. Thaddeus Turtle, Esquire. Have you never met him? You will find his story in this delightful little book, The Wind and the Willows.
I've come to return the book I borrowed.
Finished already?
Oh, I couldn't put it down. Have you got anything new?
Welcome back. I'm your host, Courtney, and I'm joined as always by one of my favorite travel partners, my lovely co-host, Emily.
Courtney, today we get to return to the theme parks and plan a me party because one is the new two.
It's a party just for moi, but actually it can be for anyone. Back on episode 52, theme park hipster blogger and founder Nikky J joined us for a podcast party with fellow content creators to discuss the world of Disney blogging. But today she's joining us solo, and that's fitting because as the author of the Solo Theme Park Traveler's Guide, Tips and Tricks for Your Solo Theme Park Hopping in Florida, which will be our main focus today. As founder of the Theme Park Hipster brand, Nikky has created a community that embraces and encourages solo travelers via her blog, podcast, and social channels, which we'll be sure to include in our show notes. Welcome, Nikky.
Hi, everybody. I am so excited to be here today with you guys.
We're really excited to have you, and we loved having you in our previous episode to talk about the online Disney community, but now we get to specifically talk to you and our collective love of theme parks. Before we get into your book and tips and tricks for solo travel, we want to learn more about you. So can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself, your blog, and why you love to travel to theme parks?
Well, once again, my name is Nikky J, and sometimes around social media, you'll see the phrase I coined talking about pharmacist turned theme park blogger, which all stemmed from childhood. I was an avid watcher of the Disney Channel, and back then they used to do a lot of shows that took you behind the scenes of what they did at the theme parks. And a lot of people in the Disney fandom, you have people with who love the movies. But for me, I was always about the theme parks. So at the Disney Channel, I watched Walt Disney World Inside Out, and that made me really want to go to the theme parks so much. And before that time, I went to theme parks, but I had never been to Walt Disney World because, you know, like it is today, it is the most expensive. So my very first theme park was this old theme park in Florida called Boardwalk and Baseball. And I was about 5 years old. And it's still so vivid in my head. And then after that, my family, we went to SeaWorld Orlando. It didn't have any rides at the time, but it was still a great time. And after that, I was just hooked on theme parks, any theme park. And so when I finally went to Disney in 94, I was like, I'm so happy. And my family, it was kind of like Christmas. And my family just let me take the reins, and I led them around the whole park. I had never been to that park before, but my mom, we used to drive on the turnpike at the visitor stations. You could pick up maps. So I would pick up all these maps from all the theme parks in the world, well, what they had in there. And when I would get home, I would study the map and I would pretend as if I was walking around that theme park. So when I got to the Magic Kingdom, I already knew my way around. And after that, I always just became the leader of the theme parks from childhood to adulthood. And then I got to college, and, you know, you have to kind of focus on your studies. And so I didn't go to the parks as much. And I definitely didn't go to Disney. Like Disney was always like that one park, like once a year, maybe once every other year. And I remember being a child and even going through college, and I was like, when I get grown, because, you know, we're always like, when we get grown and we can do what we want, I'm going to go to theme parks whenever I want. I'm going to, you know, just go out there. I'm going to get on all the rides, and nobody's going to tell me when I can't go. But then when I got grown and got my job, I got an annual pass to Disney, and I was so happy. But then there was a problem. I didn't have anybody to go with me. I mean, they go occasionally, but I mean, we don't want to spend our weekends with you at the theme parks. And I wanted to go all the time because that was my escape. And I finally bit the bullet in 2010 when the Wizarding World of Harry Potter opened Hogsmeade. And that was like, I knew no one was going to go with me because I didn't know anybody who loved theme parks just as much as I did. And I didn't know anyone who loved Harry Potter just as much as I did, who was willing to sit in the Florida sun in June with people who had robes on for hours just to say you were there on opening day. No one was going to do it. And you had to get up. I had to get up at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I was living in Tampa at the time just to drive over. And so I just bit the bullet and I went. And that day changed everything. I was like, oh, it's not that bad. I could go by myself. And here we are today. Teaching people.
Yes, I love that that was such a pivotal moment for you. And I feel like you addressed this well in the guide, but I'd like to know what initially stopped you from traveling solo. I know Harry Potter was your catalyst to finally bite the bullet, but what were your initial apprehensions?
Okay, so one of the things that stopped me before was thinking that people would notice me. I mean, it was like this Black woman coming up into like the Disney parks by herself. She had no one with her. And I thought everyone was going to look at me like, what are you doing? That's so weird. And then it wasn't that way. Once I ripped off the Band-Aid, I mean, nobody really notices that you're alone. They didn't notice I was alone unless I actually said that I was alone. And then sometimes along that path, I would meet other people who were there alone, solo travelers, and then we become friends. And on rare occasions, because usually when I'm alone, I don't know, I don't really want to make friends because I just feel so awkward and I already have my day planned. But sometimes they want to tag along so that, you guys can tag team the park together. But at the beginning, it was just thinking that somebody would realize I was there by myself. It was just such an overwhelming feeling of thinking that.
I remember when I went on my first solo trip, I'm not going to count for the purpose of this episode Disney College Program going to the parks by myself as a solo trip because I lived there or I was working there. But my first, I planned a trip 2017. I was going down by myself and I got so many questions of why would you want to go by yourself? And I was like, well, why not? It's like the same. I've been asked the same question. I started going to the movies by myself, like pre-COVID. And I still got questions. They're like, why would you go to the movies by yourself? Like, why would you not? You sit quietly in a theater. It's the perfect thing to do by yourself. And the more I think the college program, Courtney, maybe for you too, because we had small days. I like what you say in your book, start small. And I would just spend 2 hours by myself in the park because my friend didn't get off their shift until 5 and I was done at 3 or whatever. And having those small moments, that was such a great tip to start small. And then you have that confidence to go do things. And then I was like, yeah, I'm going to spend 10 days in Florida by myself. Maybe I'll meet up with some friends. Maybe I won't. And it ended up being great.
And I love that tip that you mentioned about starting small because you don't people think about it and they're like, I cannot do it, but you don't have to do your whole vacation by yourself. You can there might be some things that you want to do that you really want to see while you're here in Florida. No one else wants to see, but you can just get there before your family gets there or your friends, knock it out. And then when they get there, you're already in that theme park mode. You're like, hey guys, welcome to the party. I've been here for a while. You're late, but you don't have to just always feel like you have to plan out this whole luxurious vacation, even though it is great, but you don't have to.
So talking more about your book, you have an online presence. We want to know what motivates you to take your tips and planning from online to a print format, and how does your blogging then supplement what you've put in your book?
So when I first started my book, it kind of came out of just, how you're just sitting on the couch, kind of like when you have a podcast and you're thinking, oh, I could do that episode. So I had written a small article on a website called the Orlando Informer, I think in 2014, about going solo because I realized people kept asking me, you're going to the parks by yourself? And I was like, yeah. And I didn't know that it was such a big deal to people. And so I was just sitting there in my house and I was like, I could write a book about this. I mean, I wrote about it online, but I could really like dive in deep to why you should just at least think about doing it. And that's how it came about. And from the book, I started to write more articles because at that time I was blogging, but I didn't really have a sense of direction of where my blog should be. I just like to talk about theme parks. But then I realized I always talked about going solo with people. So when the book was coming out, I was like, well, let me just add more content to the blog. So actually, the book is kind of like a precursor to the blog that you see today. After I wrote the book, I got even more questions. So I started answering as many questions as I could on the blog. So the blog kind of like fills in the blanks that the book did not, because I wrote it kind of like before I got really, really serious about this area of travel.
Yeah, I feel like it's nice to have that niche in something as big as this theme park or Disney community. And we certainly have ours with books. So one thing that we like to do is go a little behind the scenes into the writing and publishing process. I've noticed in your like opening pages that you credited kind of a guide for that. I'd love to learn a little more about your process for writing this book and getting it out there.
When I finally made the decision to write the book, I was thinking, okay, how am I going to outline this? So first I started with the few blog posts that I had and some that I written on other publications. And I looked at them and I was like, okay, these posts, they're kind of thin. I need something else. So then I went to forums to see what people were asking about, to what kind of questions they had about, first of all, solo traveling, and then what kind of questions they had about solo traveling to theme parks, and then just theme park general questions. So that kind of helped me outline the book. And then I read this one book. I read a lot of books, but I think there was this one book just called The Solo Traveler. And I think their website is The Solo Traveler World or something. They're great people. And I like their format because they kind of take the reader or the future solo traveler into a series of how to kind of like plan out that first trip. It's not meant to be an all-in-one everything, but it's just meant to kind of first get you to focus on why it's okay. Then 2, to kind of get your mindset changed a little bit. Then 3, some of the tips you need just to solo travel in general. And then I went through all the parks that you should visit here in Florida. Then I wanted to get some stories of other solo theme park travelers and their adventures around the park, and then kind of sum it up. So that was kind of like my process. Once I had that kind of mapped out, then I was like, okay, well, I didn't think about getting anyone to publish the book. I knew it was going to be self-published because it was just something I wanted to get out. I didn't want to go through the whole looking for an agent, that kind of thing. And I knew that with today's technology, I could publish it on my own. So I went out and I saw a writing coach. And basically, she was just my coach who coached me through every step of the process, from helping me outline the book to helping me get my first draft completed. She would review it, send it to her editor, bring it back to me, and then helping me go through the process of getting it live on places like Amazon. And I have the digital print on this website called Gumroad, or you can go do it on Theme Park Hipster. So she kind of just walked me through the whole process because she would produce so many books and I didn't know what I was doing. So she was just my writing coach. And then I published it in April of 2017. And I was happy because it was, with writing a book, it's a lot. And that's why I haven't written an updated version yet, because I'm like, I have to get my mindset back to that moment because it is very intensive.
So talking about that layout, that first third of your book does concentrate on motivating readers to take that leap of faith. And I had so much fun reading that section because I felt like, you said you published this April of 2017. I went on my solo trip July of 2017.
Oh, wow.
I wish I knew that this was out there at the time. I wasn't as involved in the Disney online community yet. That kind of came to me more in like the 2018 spectrum. But reading some of your motivations, like this is why you should do it, it reminded me so much of my first journey. So I want to hear from your words. What did you experience on your first trip that makes traveling solo an experience that everyone should have?
I think what I experienced, I just remember the nerves. I was going through different kind of emotions because it was my first time traveling solo. I was nervous. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Who am I going to talk to? Because I do have slight, introvert. I know people throw it around, but it's a thing. So I was like, am I gonna have to make small talk? What am I gonna say to people when I get to Universal? And then I had the other feeling of, oh my God, Harry Potter is coming to life. I'm gonna see them, and this is when all the stars came, even Daniel Radcliffe. They were all there, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm so excited. I'm gonna see Hogwarts. Like, this is coming to life, because at that time I was like in a really dark place. So J.K. Rowling, well, when I went to Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling's books were like everything. The Harry Potter books, they were kind of getting me through just to escape from everything I was going through. So to see it kind of come to life at that moment, I just had so many emotions. And so when I got there and I was waiting in line, I mean, if you're waiting with people in line for about 5-6 hours, you're going to start to talk to the people who's in front of you and behind you. And then it just was like, one, I realized I wasn't the only one who wanted to travel solo. And two, it was just like, you guys like Harry Potter too? You notice all these little nuances in the book and the movies, and we're having conversations. And that day just changed everything. It's why Theme Park Hipster is here. It is why, I'm who I am today, because of that moment when I took that leap and I went, and I am so happy, so happy.
I'm glad you had that experience. I feel like, I know it's not Disney, but as a book podcast, we know a lot of our listeners are Harry Potter fans too. So I'm sure they can appreciate like what that moment meant to you. I appreciated that a lot of your encouragement and advice could apply to any solo travel. But why do you think people should travel solo specifically to a theme park?
Well, this is for people, mostly it's for people who are theme park fans, because there are a lot of theme park fans, and sometimes you're just that one person in your group of friends or your family. And a lot of the people I meet in the solo traveler community for theme parks, they're like, my friends are getting older, they got a family, they don't want to go. Or when they would go, it was kind of like, yeah, we're hanging out, but you were always that person who was just a little extra with the theme parks. Like, you wanted to know about how the ride came about, you want to know about the designers, you go online forums and everything just to get more detail. And your friends are kind of like people, they're casual, it's kind of like, oh, it's something to do. So I was writing it from that person, and I wanted to make sure I was fulfilling the need for that person.
Theme parks can be so fun. I've loved, once you get over that fear of riding a ride by yourself, maybe it's because of the pictures, like the fact that like on these rides, you get a photo and you're like, oh, I'm sitting there by myself. You don't have to post that photo. You don't have to do that. So once you kind of get over that, like, I'm going to sit in this row by myself the first time, it's so much fun.
Yes.
It's so much fun. We're going to get to more tips and tricks, but the first one I want to start with is Courtney and Nikky. You are both in Florida, and I had to laugh when I was reading your section about what to expect when you come from another part of the country or the world and you descend upon Central Florida, because you have this idea in your head of what going to Florida is like, and I loved how you talked. You're like, no, you're not ready. As Florida natives, to both of you, what do you want people to know about visiting your state?
The summertime is more brutal than you can expect. It is not just the heat, it's the humidity. It's just when you get out, you just like, you just feel like blah. Like, that's how you feel in the summertime. The sun just sits on your forehead, unless you have a hat. Because if not, it might not sit on your forehead. It's going to sit on your arms, and it just follows you like, hey, we're getting on a ride together. It's just that heat. That's one of the things that you really have to prepare for. Stay hydrated, cover up everything. Well, cover up in a way where you're still not sweating, and then take a lot of breaks. Take breaks, because if not, you're going to be so exhausted. That sun, it's like, okay, I'm going to zap your energy out. I'm zapping it out.
I remember it was a meme that had a picture of when you exit the Orlando airport, and it just said, I can feel the humidity of this picture. Because once that air conditioning is gone, you're like, oh, I'm in Florida now. I know, Nikky, you have lived here, I believe, your entire life. I'm from Maryland, like Emily. Well, Emily's from New Jersey, but we both met in Maryland. I moved to Florida in 2014, but because my mom is a teacher, I spent my summers coming to Florida. So we only came in the summer. So I would make the recommendation that you did, if your travel allows for flexibility. Like, October through February is just such a lovely time here. There's special events at each of the theme parks, you know, the different festivals at Epcot. I think now Universal's getting into that with like their Mardi Gras, or Halloween time is my absolute favorite time of the year in general, but especially in Central Florida. So I like that advice to look outside the window of summer if you have the flexibility. I think especially solo, you're only depending on your own schedule, maybe not your partner's work schedule or your family's. If you can take that time off, and I always encourage people to use their paid time off, that's what it's there for.
Yes,
take
definitely.
a break, get out, and try to come maybe when you normally wouldn't.
Absolutely.
My short time living in Florida, also learning that just like we say, like up here in the Northeast, like, oh yeah, wear layers, prepare for anything. I feel like that applies also to Florida, more so for the rain aspect. If you're particularly going in summer, that's the more rainy season. So I appreciated, like you say over and over, pack the poncho. You're not going to regret it.
I feel like the packing list itself was really helpful. I am such a checklist person, so seeing all of that laid out is great for people who might not know what to expect. I always joke that I no longer check the weather in the summer. My mom will be like, "What's it like there today?" I'm like, "Well, it's hot, and it's gonna rain sometime between 2 and 4 o'clock." So just, I carry an umbrella with me all the time now, because you never know. And I think if you are going in those off seasons, know that the weather can change, and you think we've been talking about how hot it is in Florida because that is the truth, but it can get cooler. I went on a trip in college. We had a pretty long winter break. We were really lucky. We had a 5-week long winter break, so I got to go in the off season of January 2011 with my college roommate. But I was so glad that I remember my mom dropped us off at the airport, and I almost left my jacket in her car, like, you know, because it's probably 20 degrees in Baltimore. I was like, oh, I don't need this, but I had it with me, and I was so glad I did, because it ended up being one of those like 42-degree days in Florida while we were there. I think if you look at the pictures from that trip on like the Facebook album, and Epcot, I'm wearing like shorts and a cute tank top. And then at Hollywood Studios, I'm wearing leggings and a coat, because it went from being like maybe 75 to 45 over the course of 2 days.
That's Florida for you.
For sure.
I want to jump back to something Courtney said about the lists. And I like that you also provided like you have a lot of lists in here. And I like this for a lot of reasons. One, some guidebooks, Courtney and I have reviewed the Birnbaum's guidebook, and if you are a solo traveler and has never been somewhere, that can feel so overwhelming. I love how simplistic your lists are. It is just, here is a simple list of everything available in Magic Kingdom. Here is a simple list of everything available in Epcot. And then you have a great list of hotels in the area. And I felt like it was such an not overwhelming, like I have all this information and theme park planning. It was a very straightforward, you can do this. And I liked also here's a rough outline of how to do one day in this park. Because I like that. And I was looking through that and I was like, I do that.
I'm glad you noticed that, because me and my writing coach, we went back and forth with that part, because I'm familiar with those guys too. And they can make this massive book because they have staff, they have all these people. And I could have did that, but it wouldn't have been released on 2017, maybe like more like 2018. And also I kept going back and forth. I'm like, okay, I've never seen too many books have these big lists. And I was like, is this like too much? And she was like, I mean, what do you think? What do you think your readers? Because I'm like, I'm still coming from a blogger standpoint, and we like to make things more readable for people. So when I was writing a book, I had to think about, I was thinking about readability from the standpoint of when somebody's skimming a website, but then this is a book format. So people are used to more paragraphs, but I'm like, okay, this is the information. And if I went through a description of each and every single ride here, which most likely would have shut down before I even published the book, because that's what I was going through, which was so annoying. this book would be so long. So I just was like, okay, I'm gonna put it in here. And then when I do more guides in the future that focuses on a particular theme park, I can kind of expand on things. But I'm glad you guys noticed that, because that was a lot of back and forth between me and my writing coach.
Yeah, I feel like it lends itself to being a flexible on-the-go travel guide. I mean, it's lightweight. It fit in my purse easily. I went to Disney Springs to take a picture of it for our Instagram.
That was so awesome.
Thank you. I went to take it, but I was like, it just fit in my purse with my umbrella, because you never know when you need one.
Oh, yeah.
Got through security just fine. I feel like you do a great job of giving, like, hey, here's what's there. But really, if you think about it, these guidebooks, like we talked about, Birnbaum's has been around for probably over 40 years at this point. Like, back in the day, there weren't all these resources, so they had to be so in-depth. But it's like, I feel like that people can go to the internet. Like, you have a little description of the restaurant, its price range, and if something really sparks your interest, skimming that list, then you can go seek out the resources about it. You don't need like a 4-sentence description of each attraction in each restaurant. So I feel like it does work really well for someone to take with them as they're traveling. Be like, oh, what was that place that I wanted to look up? So I appreciate that as well.
Something I started doing when I was reading, the comment you had said in there of, this is your chance, like solo traveler, even if you have been to Disney as many times as we all have, you always have things on your list that you're like, I haven't gotten to do that yet. And I want to get to it. And traveling solo is a great time because you don't have to compromise with what other people want to do. So I wrote in the book, which is something that's really hard for me to do as a person, is writing in books. But I started checking off when I went through all of your lists. I started checking off like every ride. I'm like, yes, I've done all of these rides. Yes, I've done these restaurants. And then I was like, oh, I have not been there. I have not been there. So now I have my list of, when I go, I need to knock off something new. So I started actually writing in your book and checking off the things that I had done.
But that's what it's there for. I wanted this to be like a handy guide that you can take with you. You can pull out, mark on it, make references, take notes, put a little, I know people don't like to bend the pages, but I do that. I'm sorry. On guidebooks, especially
your
like
book.
Tutorial. So I'm like, well, it's just for me. I don't care. If somebody got an issue, it's my book. So I wanted it to be like a light, easy read. I didn't want it to be like a book where you're like, oh my God, this is just taking forever. When will she get to the end? Because sometimes I do read books and I'm like, okay, when we're gonna get to I've been reading this for about 2 weeks now. When is it gonna be over? And I wanted it to just be like a nice, easy, fun, lighthearted book.
Yeah, and I liked that your book expands beyond the Disney bubble to cover solo trips to Universal, Busch Gardens, SeaWorld, other places as well. And it got me thinking, for you, how does the solo experience differ between each of these parks?
I think my mindset just changes with each park. So when I go to Disney, I'm thinking, classic Disney, think about the animation from the 90s and just that classic make you feel like you're a kid again, imagination. When I go to parks like SeaWorld and Busch Gardens, I'm thinking about my core, my roots of when I start traveling. So it reminds me of the classic Florida theme park days, but with a modern twist, because when you go to SeaWorld and Busch Gardens, it still has that 90s vibe of Florida theme parks, but they still keep it updated. And I visited those parks, especially Busch Gardens and Universal. We'll talk about that later. But I visited Busch Gardens so much because it was one of the parks my family could afford to have annual pass for, that one is just my special place. I go there and I just go through the memories of getting on this ride when I was in 4th grade, or when I sat over here and something funny happened. Like when we went to SeaWorld my first time. I don't think my brother would kill me, but we went out to go have lunch because, family on a budget, you brought your lunch with you and you had to go back out to eat your lunch at the car. And I remember my brother was eating his sandwich and a bird pooped on it.
Oh, no.
I know. And it's like, I was maybe like 4 or 5, maybe 6, I don't know, somewhere. And I just still remember that. And I remember he was so mad. So every time I go to SeaWorld, I think about that. And then when I go to Magic Kingdom, I think about how my mom told my brother to take off his Orlando Magic hat before we got on Splash Mountain, and he didn't want to listen.
Uh-oh.
And you see the hat on the photo, but then he didn't have the hat. And I remember when we left Magic Kingdom, my mom had to get him a new one. So every time I get on Splash Mountain, I think about that. But when I go to Universal on my solo trips, I guess every park reminds me of something when I was a kid.
it's nice to have that connection and those memories for sure. I liked that you included Gatorland. I actually just went to Gatorland earlier this month. My mom, she's a teacher, fully vaccinated. She was in town for Easter weekend, and I was like, you know what, I need to branch out a little, with the reservation system with the parks. It wasn't going to quite work out for those bigger attractions. I was like, let's go to Gatorland. I've never been. And so I think that's great for people who might be repeat visitors to these bigger theme parks. Start branching out in Florida. There's a lot to do.
Absolutely. Central Florida has so much. And I mentioned Gatorland. That's just something that you can do outside of the popular theme parks, because Gatorland, like when I talk about that classic Florida feel, now that's what you get at Gatorland. And they have a lot of little paths that you can take. It is just such a serene place. And I know they have gators there. It's kind of like serene with gators, but they do a good job of kind of helping you escape the reality. And there's other stuff you can do. There's thrilling things. You can go skydiving here in Central Florida. They have hot air balloon tours. Just it's so much. They do these jet ski things that you could go out there and jet ski. That's just a few that you can do here right in Orlando.
Yeah, it really, when you said this classic Central Florida, like when we pull it up to the entrance, it said established 1949. I'm like, this was here before Disney, before, Florida had this theme park boom. So I definitely got the classic feel. And I actually used the word serene to describe to someone else. Like there's these nice nature walks. Like I think, same thing, people outside of Florida might have this stereotype about gators. But like if you don't bother them, they won't bother you. And
absolutely.
Yeah, they're just right there chilling in the water, and you're walking around and like just taking in the beauty of nature.
So to get to the heart of this book, let's share some of our favorite tips and tricks. We've all traveled solo. Nikki, you are our expert guide here, but I thought it'd be fun for us to share some of our tips and tricks for how to travel solo or just other fun things you've experienced traveling in the theme parks. One that I shared with you, Nikki, that I saw immediately in Magic Kingdom was go left.
Oh.
Don't go right.
My family was a left family too. We started in Adventureland as well.
I don't know if this is the thing about theme parks. Whichever path you start out on your first visit, it seems like that's what you stick to. That's the normal path. And if you go another way, you're like, oh, I'm just doing something different today. But you always go back to your normal path.
When I took that college trip, my roommate, her family was also like a big Disney family, and we reached a point of contention because my family always hit Mexico first in World Showcase, and her family always went to Canada, and it became a thing. I was like, we're going to Mexico. I won, by the way, and now she sees that
I started at Mexico too.
Yes,
I do.
Clockwise, not counterclockwise.
Oh yeah, I guess that's why I go left when I go to the Magic Kingdom.
I think my parents read it in a guidebook, like one of the Birnbaums, like always go left, and that's just what we did. So like, yeah, it was great to experience those adventures. Like I feel like Adventureland is also a very serene place, like with all the foliage, and so it was always a great start to our day at Magic Kingdom. One of the tips that I really liked, and this should come to no surprise to our listeners, is to have a book with you. Like I am also an introvert, and if I don't feel like making chit chat in the lines, I have a Kindle that's portable with me. Any book I want, I can usually just get right on there, and that's a great way to pass the time in line. I think one of our friends on the Mad Chatters, Jeremy, had taken a solo trip before he moved here, and I think he said he was watching a movie in like the 3-hour line for Flight of Passage, just on Netflix, on his phone. Like if you don't want to have to talk to people, you don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah, I created on my theme park Hipster app, I created just a trivia section. Well, I got it for me so I could do trivia in line, but it's open for anybody else. I do that, and I love bringing a book with me. That's one of the vivid memories I have about being at Epcot is I brought this one book. It was like a very inspirational book, and I sat back there behind the UK pavilion where the garden is, and it was a nice, cool Florida morning. It wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold, and I was just sitting back there with a cup of coffee. And I was reading my book, and I just sat there. I was like, oh, my God, this is the life. I felt like this was the life, to be in Disney reading a book, having some coffee and people watching with the UK gardens and everything. It was amazing.
I had that experience on my college program. I had to rely on the bus transportation. It was kind of like if you took this one bus, you were going to be, 30 minutes early. If you took this other bus, you were going to be 30 minutes late. So sometimes, just because I'm an anxious traveler, I would get to work or like to Magic Kingdom 2 hours early, take a book with me to Tom Sawyer Island, and just sit on a rocking chair. And it was some of the most peaceful moments in a theme park. So I like that, we think of theme parks as these hubbubs of busy, but you were able to find that quiet spot. Emily, did you ever read in a theme park?
I don't know if I read in the theme parks in times that I was there, but I definitely agree with the tip of take a moment to slow down. I had a day, I remember on my college program, I took a day and I didn't do any rides. I told myself I'm going to be in the theme park, but I'm not going to do any rides. And it was one of my favorite days because I actually experienced like all of the shows. I experienced the parades. I listened to the piano player on Main Street for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And like things like that, I sat in the hub grass with my Starbucks and just enjoyed some people watching. And in the distance, at the time, it was Dream Along with Mickey was happening in the background. And it was just so lovely. So I definitely agree. Like at some point in your solo trip, like just take a minute to enjoy being by yourself and just finding a nice space. And that can be anywhere. Like Tom Sawyer Island is definitely an underrated spot in the park. Enjoy Tom Sawyer Island.
Exactly. I love that place, especially for solo travelers. If you kind of just want to like, okay, let me just take a break and kind of like you just sit there and you reflect on the trip you just had or the trip you're having. And it's a great place just to discover. It's a lot of nooks and crannies and people sleep on that part. I know it's kind of like, a journey to get there, but I love it over there.
I liked the advice of embracing different hobbies within the park. It made me think of a specific experience that I had back in 2015. I was fresh off my college program, so I did live here, but the idea of having a solo day, mostly like you do go with your friends. But I think it was maybe 2 weeks into kind of my big girl job. And so I hadn't really met people yet. All my college program friends had gone back to their schools or had left, and I had off for MLK Day, but like I didn't know anyone. So I decided, I think with my big girl job, they gave me like a DSLR camera for some of our things, and I needed to learn that. So I was like, what better place to play around with this fancy camera than to pop over to Disney's Hollywood Studios and just, I think similar to Emily, like didn't really go on any attractions because I did not want to break that camera on Rock and Roller Coaster or Tower of Terror. But I just really walked around and took in the park through the lens of the camera and played around with photography. So that just brought back that memory for me.
Yeah, that tip was very personal when I wrote that one because I remember when I first started Theme Park Hipster blog, I had this little notebook. I would write my blog posts down first with my hand. And that was what I would take with me to the parks. And I would just sit and I would find a spot. Well, I would think about it before I got there. And I would get to that spot that I knew would bring me like the most inspiration. And I would go there and I would write a blog post about that topic in that area. And I just remember feeling so inspired. And I would have like the Pandora Disney station going. So I would be having that Disney music. I'd be writing. I just felt, I just loved it.
Oh, that reminded me. I didn't read in the parks, but I did journal.
Yes.
I bring a journal with me on any trip I go to. And so that was something. So a tip that stood out to me also was like eating. You had talked about a good opportunity to eat by yourself is sometimes eat at the counter. A lot of these places, like I was thinking about like 50s Primetime, they have the tune-in lounge and you can get food there. Or if you have those spaces like quick service where it doesn't feel maybe as awkward if you're not just getting like this big table at a restaurant and you're the only one sitting there. It feels more natural when you're sitting like at a counter where other smaller parties are. But I use my eating time when I'm traveling either by myself or even with my family to journal. I write down like things that I did, what was new to me that I didn't do last time I came to Disney World. I like to it's a nice quiet moment. And you also, again, just don't feel like, so like bringing a hobby with you or something to do, even while you're eating, the same as when you're in line, it doesn't feel like so much by yourself time when you have something to actively do.
It's amazing. And the thing I like about the Disney parks is that their dining experiences, all the restaurants, they make you feel as if you're not by yourself. And Tune In Lounge, sitting at that lounge, I have a lot of stories about sitting there. It got to the point where I had to kind of fall back because they started to know my name. I had to fall back. But even just places like the Nomad Lounge at Animal Kingdom, it's just so relaxing, a nice patio. I could go on. The one in the wine cellar in the Italy Pavilion at Epcot. These are places where you're traveling solo and you want to dine and kind of reflect, journal, write, do anything. These are the places that you can chill and still have a nice dinner and not feel so awkward about being on your solo trip.
Yeah, I have a great recommendation for people who might be a little more extroverted and do want to make those connections. I think this is more of a once we kind of get into a more normal thing, because I'm not even sure if this restaurant is open right now, but I remember on a trip that my mom came to visit, we wanted to see the candlelight processional at Epcot, and we did one of the dining packages where you get reserved seating, and we picked Teppanyaki at Epcot, and that restaurant is, if you've been to a Kobe steakhouse or a Sakura, it's a hibachi style, and in pre-COVID times, you were often sat with other parties. So my mom and I were a party of 2. I think there was a family of 4, but seated right by both me and my mom were 2 different solo travelers. They weren't together, but they both had the same idea. They wanted to do the dining package, and they picked that restaurant because they felt like, well, I won't really feel alone because I am dining with other people. And we struck up a conversation with them, they struck up a conversation with each other, so like these solo travelers were able to connect. I remember my mom remarking, like, as we were then waiting for the candlelight procession to start, she's like, that's a great restaurant if you're here by yourself, like you get to talk to people and make friends. So I'm an introvert, I don't know that I wanted to strike up a conversation out of the blue, but for people who might be looking for that, I think that is a great option.
That is definitely a great tip, and I do recommend that because Disney has a lot of special events that are geared towards adult travelers, not just solo travelers, but adult travelers. There's I call it the monorail. Disney has another name for it, but the monorail pub crawl, dinner crawl. But there is an official Disney one. It's called Dine in the Sky, where you will be in a small group and Disney will take you from the different hotels on the monorail loop where you'll get a progressive dinner. You'll start with an appetizer, then you'll get at the Contemporary, and you get like another course. You have a lot of courses, but at each hotel you can get a course and a nice adult beverage if you're of age. And that's something that solo travelers can do who want to have that Disney experience, meet some other people. And I'm pretty sure a lot of those events have other solo travelers in them.
Yeah, I love that you bring up the tours, because just as big Disney history nerds, Emily and I love them anyway. And when you framed it in the terms of solo travel, I was like, oh my gosh, of course. Like, yeah, I would feel totally comfortable going on one of those by my own, because you're led by a Disney cast member and you are in a very intimate group. And I feel like the cast members often do a great job of getting everybody engaged in the tour. Emily, Emily, didn't you do the really big one that was like 7 hours long?
Yes. So I didn't do it solo. I was in high school. I think I was a senior in high school. I went down with my mom, my aunt, and my cousin, and my sister, we did the full backstage. I think it was called Behind the Magic, and you went to a backstage piece of every park, as well as one of the workshops where they repair stuff for the theme parks, the nursery for all the plants. Like, I saw the topiaries not on display. Wow. It was very odd because they were like being grown. So it's like the structure and like one character is half grown, but the other half is still coming in. It was very interesting, but it was such a cool, and yeah, you did bond, even though I was with my family, because you're with this group of people for that long period of time. Now I did the one where it was a full day, like it was 8 hours. But you're with that group of people, and eventually you start standing near the same 3 families, and then you start to get to know each other. We did a lot of those tours. If you do some of the longer ones, they have a dining break And then, yeah, you're sitting at a big table with all these people you don't know. And it's so natural. What I love about theme parks is we're all brought there for similar reasons, whether that's to have a family vacation or it's because you have a connection with Disney itself. Like everyone has an entry point here. So you can find something. If you are by yourself and you want to connect with someone, there are ways to do it. Or as we've discussed, there are ways that if you really want to just really enjoy your me party time, there are ways to do that too.
Absolutely.
Well, as we wrap up, I'd love to know what the biggest thing that you'd like our listeners and your future readers to take away about solo travel and your guide.
I guess the biggest takeaway, I just look at it is if there's, and it's beyond just solo traveling. If there's something in life that you want to do it. Don't let fear hold you back, because a lot of times people don't do something in life because of fear of the unknown. You have to be courageous enough to say, I want to do this, whether it's I want to go to Disney. No one wants to go. I'm tired of waiting. I'm going to go. Or it's, hey, I want to start this particular business, but I'm so afraid that I'm going to fail. My thing with solo travel, which the core of it is just getting out there and being courageous and just doing it. So with all this being said, that is like the main center point of everything that I like to teach everyone who's thinking about going solo.
I think that's great advice. I feel like a lot of us are itching to travel right now, so hopefully that'll inspire people as they prepare to take that leap.
That's just what I'm here for. The Solo Traveler Guide has changed my life, and when I wrote it in 2017, I had no idea that my life was just going to change from 2017 to now, because in the middle of writing that book, I found out I was pregnant with my first child, which I was so joyous, but then right away my mom had a stroke, and then later that year she passed. So it has been a journey, and I always tell people that, you know, if I hadn't wrote that book, I don't even know if I would have even been who I am today, because it kind of helped me be distracted with all the things that was happening. And I was being a new mom and losing my mom. So that it took a lot. And so I always say Theme Park Hipster has always been consistent. Every part of my life, the goods, the bads. That's why I just love theme parks. I call it my theme park therapy. It's my therapy, because when I was in dark moments, I would go there to escape, whether it was going through the boy who lived, Harry Potter, in case you don't know, going through his steps at Universal, or just walking through some of my favorite rides at Epcot, like Living with the Land. Those things make me escape, and it kind of helped me just stay sane through everything that was happening.
And with everything everyone has been through in this last year with this global pandemic, and as parks are starting to reopen, a lot of people I've started seeing on Twitter, I've tagged you actually a few times, because I've seen people say, I need to go, I need to have my escape time. And a couple people have said, I am going by myself. Anyone have any help? And I was like, Theme Park Hipster, Theme Park Hipster. So I'm starting to see that because like you said, especially this last year too, I'm seeing this more from people across different communities. We're all part of that. We could all use that. Yeah. And know what? It might be that you have to do it by yourself, because you got to take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
I think that's such great advice, and especially relevant now. So we're so grateful for you for sharing that journey with us and our listeners today. We're going to keep our community going. Up next, we'll be joined by our podcast pals from Poor Unfortunate Podcasts. Both co-hosts, Connor and Caroline, will join us to discuss the children's book Basil of Baker Street by Eve Titus. And Basil of Baker Street was the original title of The Great Mouse Detective, which will celebrate its 35th anniversary this year. I can't wait to hear what Emily and Connor have to say about this one, because I know you are both huge fans of the film.
Oh, Courtney, you don't even know what is coming next episode.
I'm going to get ready.
Connor and I have now we have our group chat that we call Podcast Pals with Poor Unfortunate Podcast. We'll talk about our origin story of our two podcasts coming together over some trivia. But Connor and I have now split off into our own online chat just about Great Mouse Detective. He posted a meme, I responded, and we're now best friends.
I better do my homework for that one, because I think Caroline and I are still in the same boat. We're like, yeah, I watched that one on VHS 20 years ago. So
Connor and I are like reenacting it in our living rooms in front of the television.
Well, stay tuned for that. You can keep up with us for Book of the Mouse Club on Twitter and Instagram at Book of the Mouse, or email us with comments or ideas to bookofthemouseclub@gmail.com. Please be sure to leave us a review on iTunes so others can find our podcast and read and listen along with us. If you want to keep up with me, Courtney, and my adventures through Central Florida, you can follow me on Twitter at Courtney_Guth or on Instagram at GreatGuthsby.
And you could follow me, Emily, at both Instagram and Twitter at Emily_McD. And Nikki, thank you so much for joining us. You have so much more to share about being a solo traveler and about Central Florida. So please let our listeners know where they can follow your information.
Well, you can find me on any of your favorite social media platforms by just typing in Theme Park Hipster. But if you're more of like, I want to see some videos, I want some tips, find me on YouTube. You just type Theme Park Hipster, Nikky J, any of that, and you'll find the channel. Also, if you want to be in a community, with other solo theme park travelers, go over to Facebook and just type in Theme Park Hipsters and you'll find us there. And if you like listening on podcasts, I'm there too. Just type in Theme Park Hipster.
We will have all of that linked in our show notes. Lots of great content. I've had a lot of fun following since we've met in our previous episodes. And like I said, I've been tagging you to people I know now that are like, I want to go by myself. I'm like, check out
Thank you so much.
She's got great stuff. So every episode, we always like to close with a quote. And as our guest, we're going to ask that you do the honor. So what have you chose to share with us today?
One of my favorite quotes comes from Albert Einstein, and it states, "Imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attractions."
Oh, I love the coming attractions with Disney and Universal, all of those parks. A perfect pick for this. Thank you again for joining us and sharing your love of solo theme park travel with us.
It is my pleasure and honor.
Get out there and have a me party, everybody.
Book of the Mouse Club has no affiliation with the Walt Disney Company. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and participants are theirs and theirs alone. They do not represent the organizations or companies they happen to work for.